From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
The Democratic primary for governor between incumbent Dan McKee and Helena Foulkes seems to have taken the oxygen out of the room, but there is a competitive race in the Republican primary for governor, too. The state GOP has endorsed former lieutenant governor candidate Aaron Guckian, but challenger Elaine Pelino was in the lead, according to a recent poll out of the University of New Hampshire. How does a candidate break through to voters in a race that is expected to have low turnout? We'll ask our guest, Republican candidate for governor, Aaron Guckian. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Ted Nesi is off this week. On the second half of the show, Reporters Roundtable with the Boston Globe's Dan McGowan and Steph Machado. But first, we welcome Republican gubernatorial candidate Aaron Guckian. Aaron, good to see you. Welcome back.
Good morning.
60 seconds or less. Why do you want to be governor?
I want to be governor because our state's upside down right now. Rhode Island works smarter. You work directly with the frontline and union workers. When they find savings in fixed systems, they get a revenue share. The rest lowers taxes and fees. Powered by AI, and it's a 24/7, 365 anonymous idea portal. So it's process improvement. Will work directly with the Rhode Island talent to lower taxes and fees.
Before you get to that point and you can implement all of those things, you have to get through the primary, and you heard me talk about it in the top of the program there. You're the endorsed candidate by the state GOP. But down 25 points, according to a UNH poll, to someone with $3,000 in the bank. That's Elaine Pelino. What does that tell you where the Republican primary voters are right now?
Well, the poll was done before the convention.
You think that would have really moved the needle?
Yeah, I won day of, and I questioned the whole poll. Polling's polling. One time they had Governor Don Carcieri worked for as a special assistant. He was down 25, 30 points to Murph York. Bottom line is, I was very, very grateful for the endorsement, and I'm ready to go.
So you think the UNH poll, you dismiss it entirely?
Well, I never dismiss polls, but I would say right now I'm running my own campaign, and I'm ready to move on to the next
Have you done internal polling yet?
Not yet,
okay. No. Let's get this out of the way, shall we? You got some heat for making a crack about Elaine Pelino's age on WPRO's Tara Granahan show. Yep. You pointed out she was 72 years old and maybe uses AI in her website to look younger. Pelino was on Newsmakers 2 weeks ago. She was with Ted. Let's take a listen to what she had to say about that.
It just wasn't nice and alienated a lot of the voters, I believe, that are over 50 and still, women have the right to be whatever they want. And I do forgive him. I'm a Christian, I do forgive him. But I learned a long time ago, when someone shows you who they are, you got to believe them. So I will not deal with him or trust him ever.
So to point out, you did go back on the radio, back with Tara Granahan, and you apologized for your comments. Have you called her yet?
No, I haven't spoken to her.
Why not?
I think the bottom line is I apologize, and when I see her on the campaign trail, I will. I mean, there was a couple times that, the bottom line is this. We have really serious issues. She has $3,000 in account. I look forward to, debating her, and I hope we have a lot of debates. And I did. I apologized, and that was it. We just haven't spoken.
You're sort of running on a platform of compassionate conservatism. Is that fair?
Yep.
How do you square that with your comments about her?
Well, again, she was 72 years old, and she had an AI thing that was showing that she was younger. I didn't like the way it hit because I really want to talk about the issues today. And so, I apologize, and I'd just like to move on with the interview.
Who won the 2020 presidential election?
As I've said for the record, that, President Biden won the election, but I think you can have conversations about, especially what's happening right now, voter integrity. So I think you can have both things, and I've already said on the record that he lost, and moving on.
In our 12 News Emerson College poll in May, only 31% of Rhode Island voters approve of President Trump's job performance, 61% disapprove. If you were running for governor of Alabama, you'd probably win that general election. You're not, right? And the Trump brand is associated with the Republican Party. You will not be governor with 31% of the vote. How do you surmount that? How do you separate the Trump brand in Rhode Island from the party that endorsed you?
Well, I voted for President Trump, and I support the Constitution, the Second Amendment. But as I showed last time, I got 43.1% of the vote, and I won day of. So I obviously cross over to, independents and those moderate Democrats, and hopefully we can talk about those issues today.
But do you acknowledge that it is difficult to run in a blue state like Rhode Island with the president in the Oval Office right now, and a lot of the policies that he's that are unpopular in Rhode Island?
Well, President Trump, did a great job at the border. He's providing security. He's done a lot of different things for the economy that I agree with. As I've always said, I agree with certain things. I disagree, just like any president.
Like what? What did you disagree with?
Well, good question. I think that sometimes the way he responds, my dad's in the audience here, and I think it can be a little bit too aggressive. That's just the way I was brought up. But the bottom line is, I voted for him, and I also there's a lot of things that I disagreed with President Biden, specifically with the border. And he was way, and if you look at President Biden and President Clinton, pretty much and President Bush, they're all tough on the border. And unfortunately, he opened it up. I have 3 daughters, and it got very, very dangerous. People were getting killed, a lot of resources, and I'm proud of that vote.
But it does sound like when it comes, you more disagree with President Trump's style rather than his policies.
Yeah, exactly. His style, but not his policies. But I really like to talk about Rhode Island today. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this. Governor Dan McKee signed a bill that puts a moratorium on charter school expansions. Would you have signed or vetoed that bill as governor?
Yeah, I would have vetoed that. I was at the Blackstone Academy Charter School Board. As you know, I was a public music teacher. We need to expand and try to give every student the possibility to get the best education possible. And one of the things of Rhode Island Works Smarter is we need to take the handcuffs off these teachers, specifically with the administration burden that they have. And in addition, the testing, right? Why do we have to take a 2-week test if a kid, can't speak English? It should be a 20-minute screening, and they should get the resources they need. A lot of these teachers are in really difficult positions. We can streamline processes, and we need to really, pivot to the future and start, I would say that would be the answer to that question.
If you were elected governor, what's the #1 thing you would put your weight behind, #1 policy initiative that you'd want to see happen?
Well, again, Rhode Island Works Smarter. I think we can be the first smart state, and we have smarter cities. If you use modern technology and you incentivize the worker, like I said, ground up, and you reward them while we're lowering taxes, fees, we have a $15.2 billion budget for 1 million people. To put that in context, Massachusetts has a $70 billion budget for 7 million people, so they're spending $10 billion, and New Hampshire's spending $8 million. Why are we such an outlier? It's crushing us. We have a second home tax, we have the millionaire's tax, we have so many taxes and fees, we're not competitive, and we're dead last. So I don't know why anyone out there would say we're doing well, and we need to pivot, and we need to make massive change, and that's what I'm here for.
Safe to say you don't support the millionaire's tax?
No,
okay,
not at all.
If Providence elects David Morales as mayor, Rhode Island could have a Democratic socialist running the capital city, and if you win, a Republican in the governor's office. If you're elected governor, would you actively intervene to stop socialist policies you don't like in Providence, or would you be hands-off?
I believe as the leader of the state, you have to have your agenda. You have to be aggressive with that agenda. And, I renounce socialism. It seemed like the governor had a problem with that on Gene Valicenti. So capitalism, free market, and also if someone's in office, I always say, don't talk about what you can't do, see what you can do. And it might not be a lot, but we try to, at least make bridges when we can.
Let's talk a little bit about politics. Elaine Pelino, when she was on with Ted a couple of weeks ago, said, quote, Aaron is so much like Ken Block. They are both middle of the road. She went on to say, quote, I think they will cancel each other out. In other words, the Charlie Baker model, moderate Republican, is a losing formula, especially for Republicans, especially with Ken in the race. How do you respond to that? Well,
I disagree. Ken has run many races, and so have I. She's never been on a ballot before. So I really think that, I can inspire. Again, I voted for Trump. I support the Second Amendment and the Constitution, and I look forward to the primary and then hopefully to the general.
Do you view Ken as a problem for you in the general election? Well, anytime think he's going to pull from Republican
Yeah,
voters?
Anytime you have an independent, you never know where they're going to pull from. I think that, the way he's been moving, sometimes you might be able to pull from the other side. You can never, all you have to do is run your race as hard as you possibly can and try to, talk to the voter directly. And, it's think big, and we have to change. People are crushed. Electricity bills are just soaring.
All right, what would you do about that?
So, advanced energy. I talked about a commission that would be, have labor, have the QDC or Quonset Development Corporation. We need to take advantage of our asset. And there's so many different things we can do with SMRs, with what they're doing in small modular reactors, with Commonwealth, with fusion, with hydrogen, with the battery powers. We need to get into the future. And unfortunately, we're always in this reaction mode rather than respond mode. We're not doing anything in advance. And it's just, look, in East Greenwich alone, in my hometown, our property tax went up 7%. One of the things I've said is that if the legislature does 4% and they blow by that, 7 of the communities they did, it should go to the local town or municipality and they should have a vote. They shouldn't just be able to blow by it, because it's a 7% increase in my town, then the electricity bills, then the heating bills, all of it. Like my father and mother, they're 79 years old. They're retired. They live in that town, and it just keeps going up and up. My father's a local plumber, union plumber from Local 51. My mom's a respiratory therapist. And the lower and middle class, it's just getting absolutely demoralized, and this just doesn't work. It's too many taxes, too many fees. I say we're the state of twos, and it's just in too many speed cameras, and I say that's taxation by citation.
Anti-speed camera. All right, Aaron Guckian, Republican candidate for governor, thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, a reporter's roundtable with Steph Machado and Dan McGowan. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Again, Ted Nesi is off this week. We're doing a reporters roundtable from the Boston Globe. Steph Machado, Dan McGowan. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you. The Boston Globe takeover.
I know, it really is. So I want to touch on the Republican primary for governor, because we obviously just had Aaron Guckian on. I don't read too much. I'm just going to give my opinion here, which I don't often do on the show. I almost kind of agree with Aaron Guckian in a way. I don't read too much into the UNH poll that has Elaine Pelino in the lead. And that's not to disparage her campaign, right? It's just like my internal Joe Fleming is coming out and saying it's really hard to poll a Republican primary in Rhode Island. What do you two make of this race, and specifically, Dan, what are your thoughts on the poll?
Yeah, the poll was a very low sample size. I agree. I can't imagine a scenario where that's a wide disparity in the race. My guess would be Aaron Guckian probably will end up pulling it out. He's going to have the money and sort of the endorsement and the kind of resources that you need to be able to pull that out. He's not wrong. He's took heat, and you talked about it in the interview with him about his kind of clashing with Elaine Pelino, but he's not wrong that she is not running a traditional race. She doesn't have enough money to run a city council race in Providence. And so, even if she does get through in a primary, she's not going to be a factor in the general election. There's just no possible way to combat the amount of money that whoever the Democrats and Ken Block are going to have.
Yeah, I completely agree. I always hear my inner Joe Fleming every time I read the poll, and it did seem like it was too small of a size. But also, neither of these candidates have name recognition at all in Rhode Island, and one of them is going to have the star, the endorsement star next to his name on the ballot, and that makes a difference.
All right, I want to talk about Providence because you two are here, obviously, and let's talk about the debate we hosted here this time last week. You were right here in studio with us for the Boston Globe covering that.
In the audience.
You were in the audience. You've also moderated a debate between David Morales and incumbent Mayor Brett Smiley. I guess, Steph, what was your takeaway from the debate?
I think that your debate in particular was really about ideology. They were debating whether we should take the city in a direction of socialism, or, as Brett Smiley calls himself, more of a pragmatist. And so that, I think their ideological divide keeps becoming more clear, even though I think the two of them actually agree on a lot of basic stuff. They both want the snow to be cleared, right? They both are anti-ice, even though their positions were a little bit different. But for the most part, neither of them want ice coming in and arresting people in the city. And so I thought that was clear. The other thing that's clear to me is that Mayor Smiley is concerned about David Morales. He's really doubling down on the crime issue, that he would be better for crime. And he doubled down on that attack ad in your debate and said he stood by it. And I think that was telling.
Who won, Dan?
Well, whenever the disadvantage that an incumbent has in any of these things is that if you wrestle to a draw, then the challenger wins. And I would say David.
I like that you used wrestle, by the way. David Morales,
right,
wrestler.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, David Morales held his own, and I think if I'm David Morales, I came out of that campaign that debate feeling really good about what I was able to say. Like Steph said, when this comes down to a battle about ideology and who's on which side of rent control, David Morales loves that debate because he is what he is. He believes what he says, and he kind of stands by it. So he was able to get across. If you're the undecided voter who's watching that debate, if you are a more progressive voter, I think you feel very good about David Morales.
Before we get to the city council, real quick, Dan, Steph pointed out the body language from the Smiley campaign is they're concerned about Morales. I mean, he's going on statewide television, Channel 12, Channel 10, with ads, right? That's not just targeting Providence.
That's right.
Is that an indication to you they're concerned?
Very much so. I think he knows that he has a big challenge. He also knows that issue, public safety, I think plays incredibly well with the moderate to conservative sort of home-owning voters in the city. Remember, Brett Smiley has already won a race for mayor of Providence. He got 9,000 votes last time. He only needs 2,000-3,000 more votes to probably win this race. He's going to start peeling it. He wants to peel away people who maybe had some concerns about Democrats, and they're a little bit concerned. Well, if he's the guy who says, I'm with the police, and that guy's not, that's how you get over the top.
All right, Steph, 1 minute before break. I don't cover really Providence City Council unless something's going on, but both of you had your finger on the pulse. Council President Rachel Miller not running for a re-election. We're going to have new leadership in the City Council. What are you watching? I
am watching for the split between the more socialist, progressive Democrats and the more traditional, moderate Democrats, because it's going to be 15 Democrats. But what is the split going to be? Because they were not able to get their top agenda item passed this year, which was the rent control issue.
Right.
Will they get enough of the progressives in office that they are able to pass a lot more of that agenda, or will the voters send more traditional Democrats to City Hall?
30 seconds.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, look, you have to get to 8 votes to become the council president. I think that there's several candidates potentially at play, and they range the spectrum. You're going to see somebody like a Miguel Sanchez, much more progressive, Juan Pichardo, more moderate, kind of traditional Democrat. And so there's going to be a handful of other people in play there too. So, I do think you are going to get a more progressive council overall. The question is going to be who's going to be able to harness everybody. All
right, we're going to take a break on the program. When we come back, was the state takeover of the Providence Public Schools a success? It depends on who you ask. We'll ask them. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White, a reporters roundtable. We welcome from the Boston Globe, Steph Machado, Dan McGowan. I want to stick around Providence for a little bit here. The state, as we all know, July 1st handed the keys back to Providence with the public schools. Eli Sherman and Alexandra Leslie found that the state hit only 10 of 43 benchmarks that they set when all of this began in 2019. Do I have the year right? Last week, the state released a report that basically said they rescued, I think was the term they used, the school from the brink of collapse. How are we supposed to think about this, Dan?
Well, on one hand, they set really ambitious, completely unreachable goals.
Pre-COVID goals.
Pre-COVID goals. They were unreachable.
Wait a minute.
Pre-COVID.
They set the goals in June 2020.
Oh, so then it was actually during COVID. That's right. Yeah. Their first round of initial goals.
Yeah, the takeover started pre-COVID.
Okay, good point.
So completely unreachable goals. Now, what are you going to say if you're taking over the schools? We're going to do, a little bit of good and screw it up. That's a hard selling point. So they are, but it's a disadvantage, but they should be held accountable. I thought Alex and Eli's story was excellent in that way. There were some success stories. The question's always going to be, could you have spent $1 billion on school construction without a takeover, without all the polarizing kind of fights with the teachers union, things like that? You know, if you're Angelica Infante Green, the education commissioner, I think she would say the answer is no. We had to do something, and so we did, is her view of it. But the idea that this has been a rousing success is completely false.
And some of the successes they point to attendance.
Yep.
I think graduation, some SAT scores, whatnot. I mean, Steph, what do you make of this sort of fight between was it good or was it not?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that the proficiency rates on the RICAS are still quite low.
Yeah.
And just because that they've recovered from COVID and they're a little bit higher than pre-COVID, they're obviously absolutely nowhere near the goals that were set. And when we did a story back on the 5-year anniversary about how they had come nowhere near the goals, and their explanation was, well, those were sort of aspirational.
Yeah.
And I guess that confuses me because if you've set, and so they basically abandoned those goals. And if you've set goals and you've told the parents who are considering whether they're going to send their kids to this school district that here's what we're going to achieve from this takeover, and then you get nowhere close to it, I think that that's telling. Now, that being said, did they make progress? Yes. But something I noticed was right after the city got the schools back, the city council passed this ordinance that Dan wrote about to sort of fix the procurement, the way that the city buys, pays for stuff, essentially contracts, school supplies, what have you. This was something that was in the Johns Hopkins report 7 years ago. It seemed they were very quick to fix this as soon as they got the schools back. Could they have done this back then? Now, that's one teeny tiny thing that needed to be fixed, but I continue to have no idea if the takeover did anything that the city wouldn't have done on its own. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't go back in time and see what would have happened if the state never took it over.
All right, Dan, I got a minute left. I want to talk to you about this. You wrote about how Connecticut, the nutmeg state, which is arguably the worst state slogan in the country,
one of the worst, yes.
Is leaning into pizza for tourism branding. They even have the pizza trail.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I don't give your state too much thought. Your home state,
yes,
Dan,
I grew
is
up
from
there.
Connecticut. It's something I have to get through.
Yeah.
Essentially. What makes Connecticut's pizza stand out? Sell me on this, Dan.
Well, it's just the perfect combination of the crisp.
So is it universally good?
Is it a thin crust?
It is. It's a thin crust. I think it is not. There's bad pizza in Connecticut, but if you were to take the top pizza places, whether they're in New Haven or West Haven, where I grew up, they are significantly better than almost every place. Certainly in Rhode Island. Exceptions, Pizza Marvin's excellent, coal-fired pizza's excellent, but Pepe's, Modern, Mike's, Parties, you could just keep going, and it's why they were able to have this campaign that was huge. They generated millions of dollars in attention for just the campaign around pizza for Connecticut. They put Connecticut on the map.
I did like the column a lot. Maybe Rhode Island could, as you wrote, could take some advice on that. It's all the time we have. I want to make sure you check out Eli Sherman's Behind the Story this week, because we're talking about a fascinating case. We have Chris Gavin on from the Boston Globe in that one, and I filled in as a co-host there. We talk about the Rhode Island fugitive Ronald Fisher, so make sure you check that out. For Dan McGowan and Steph Machado, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.